Okay, I'm gonna do this, in case he tries to use that chair. Have room to get by.
Yes. Idiotic in love. Eleanor, my daughter, was mad about the hero of the Paris Commune, the Cigarette. Well, at least he was a Frenchman. Her sister Jennigen's fellow was English. Englishmen are like English food. Need I say more? And their sister Laura's lover, Lavag. His public displays of ardor were absurd. He would put his hand on her ass in public, as if it were the most natural thing. And Jenny defended him. It's his Creole background, she said. You know, his family came to France from Cuba. As if in Cuba, everyone went around with their hand on somebody's ass. Jenny was always trying to calm me down. Well, she might calm me, but she was unsuccessful with my boils. Did you ever have boils? There's no sickness more odious. They plagued me all my life. And then the stupid attempts to analyze me via my boils. Marx is angry at the capitalist system because he has boils. What imbeciles! How do they account for all the revolutionaries who don't have boils? Because they always find something, don't they? This one was beaten by his mother. That one was nursed by his mother until he was 10. That one had no toilet training. As if one must be abnormal to resent exploitation. Every explanation, except the obvious one, that capitalism by its nature, its attack on the human spirit, breeds rebellion. Oh yes, they say capitalism has become more humane since my time. Really? Just a few years ago, it was in the newspapers. Factory owners locked the doors on their women in their chicken factory in North Carolina. Why? To make more profit. There was a fire, and 25 workers were trapped, burned to death. Perhaps my anger did inflame my boils. But try working. Try sitting and writing with boils on your ass. And don't tell me about doctors. The doctors knew less than I did. Much less. Because the boils were mine. I could not sleep. Then I discovered something miraculous. Water. Yes, as simple as that. Cloths soaked in warm water. Jenny would apply them patiently, hour after hour. She would wake up in the middle of the night when I cried out and apply those soothing wet cloths. Sometimes, when Jenny was away, Lenchen would do that. Yes, Lenchen. Here we are living in poverty in Soho, and Jenny's mother decides to send us Lenchen to help with the babies. We had pawned our furniture, but suddenly we had a servant girl. That's how it is when you marry into the aristocracy. Your in-laws don't send you money, which you desperately need. They send you fine linen and silverware and a servant. Actually, not a bad idea. The servant can take the linen and silverware to the pawn shop and get some money. Lenchen did that many times, but she was never a servant. The children adored her, and Jenny had tremendous affection for her. When Jenny was ill, Lenchen was with her, tending to her every need. But yes, her presence created great tension between Jenny and me. I remember her singing. Jenny said, "This morning, I saw you looking at Lenchen." Looking? What do you mean? It was one of those conversations which cannot possibly come to any good. There was all this going on inside our flat on Dean Street. And outside was London. Can you imagine the streets of London in 1858? The Costa girls trying to sell a few rolls for a few pennies. The organ grinder with his monkey. The prostitutes. The magicians. The fire eaters. The street vendors bellowing trumpets. Ringing bells. The hurdy-gurdies. The organs. The brass bands. The fiddlers. The Scottish pipers. And always a beggar girl singing an Irish ballad. That's what I saw and heard walking home every evening from the British Museum, under the gas lamps that had just been lit, until I got to Dean Street and made my way through the mud and sewerage, thinking about the care they took in paving streets of the wealthy neighborhoods. Well, I suppose it's only fitting that the author of Das Kapital should slog through shit while writing his condemnation of the capitalist system. Jenny did not sympathize with my complaints about wading through the mud on the street. She would say, "That's how it feels to me, reading Das Kapital." She was always my severest critic. The book troubled her. Yes, Das Kapital. She worried that I would bore people from the start with my discussion of commodities, use value, exchange value. She said the book was too long, too detailed. She used the word ponderous. Imagine. She reminded me what our trade union friend Peter Fox said when I gave him the book. I feel like a man who's been given an elephant as a gift. Yes, Jenny said. It is an elephant. I tried to tell her this is not the Communist Manifesto, which was intended for the general public. It is an analysis. Let it be an analysis, she said. But let it cry out like the manifesto. A specter is haunting Europe. The specter of communism. Yes, she said. That excites the reader. A specter is haunting Europe. And then she read to me the first words of Das Kapital to torment me. The wealth of those societies in which the capitalist mode of production prevails presents itself as an immense accumulation of commodities. She said, that will put readers to sleep. I asked her, is that boring? Or maybe a little boring. I admitted that to Jenny. She said, there's no such thing as a little boring. Don't misunderstand. She did see Das Kapital as a profound analysis. It showed how the capitalist system must, at a certain stage in history, come into being and bring about a colossal growth of productive forces, an unprecedented increase in the wealth of the world, and then how it must, by its own nature, distribute that wealth in such a way as to destroy the humanity of both laborer and capitalist, and how it must, by its nature, create its own gravediggers and give way to a more human system. But Jenny always asked, are we reaching the people we want to reach? One day she said to me, do you know why the censors have allowed it to be published? Because they cannot understand it. And presume nobody else will. I reminded her that Das Kapital received favorable reviews. She reminded me that most of the reviews were written by Engels. I told her that perhaps she was being critical of my work because she was unhappy with me. You men, she said, you cannot believe that your work deserves criticism. And so you attribute it to something personal. Yes, more. My personal feelings are there. But this is separate. Yes, her personal feelings. Jenny was having a terrible time. I suppose I was responsible. But I did not know how to ease her anguish. You must understand that Jenny and I fell in love when I was 17 and she was 19. She was marvelous looking, with auburn hair and dark eyes. For some reason, her family took a liking to me. They were aristocrats. Aristocrats are always impressed with intellectuals. Jenny's father and I would have long discussions about Greek philosophy. My doctoral thesis on Democritus and Heraclitus. I was beginning to realize that up to now, the philosophers had only interpreted the world. But the point was to change it. When I was expelled from Germany, Jenny followed me to Paris. And there we married. And she gave birth to Jennifer and Laura. We were happy in Paris, living on nothing, meeting our friends who also lived on nothing. What a bunch we were. Bakunin, the huge shaggy anarchist. Engels, the handsome atheist. Heine, the saintly poet. Oh, Steiner, a total misfit. And Proudhon, who said property is theft, but wanted some. I tried to tell her she was still beautiful, but it didn't help. I wish you could have known Jenny. What she did for me cannot be calculated. And she accepted the fact that I could not simply get a job like other men. Yes, I did try once. I wrote a letter of inquiry to the railway for a position as clerk. Let me see. Yes, they responded as follows. Dr. Marx, we are honored with your request for a position here. We have never had a doctor of philosophy working for us as a clerk. But the position requires legible handwriting. So he must regretfully decline your offer. Jenny believed in my ideas, but she was impatient with what she considered the pretensions of high-level scholarship. Come down to earth, Herr Doctor, she would say. She wanted me to describe the theory of surplus value so that ordinary workers would understand it. I told her, no one can understand it without first understanding the labor theory of value and how labor power is a special commodity whose value is determined by the cost of the means of subsistence, and yet gives value to all other commodities of value, which always exceeds the value of labor power. She would shake her head. No, that won't do. All you have to say is this. Your employer gives you the barest amount in wages, just enough for you to survive. But out of your labor, he makes far more than what he pays you. And so he gets richer and richer while you stay poor. All right, let us say only 100 people in world history have ever understood my theory of surplus value. But it's still true. Just last week, I was reading in the newspaper reports of the United States Department of Labor. There you have it. Your workers are producing more and more goods and getting less and less in wages. What is the result? Just as I predicted. Now the richest 1% of the American population owns 40% of the nation's wealth. And this, in the great model of world capitalism, the nation that not only has robbed its own people, but sucked in the wealth of the rest of the world. Jenny was always trying to simplify ideas that were by nature complex. She accused me of being a scholar first and a revolutionary second. She said, forget your intellectual readers. Address the workers. She called me arrogant and intolerant. Why do you attack other revolutionaries more vehemently than the bourgeoisie? Proudhon, for instance. The man did not understand that capitalism must applaud the development of giant industries and then take them over. Proudhon thought we must retreat into a more simple society. When he wrote his book, The Philosophy of Poverty, I replied with my own book, The Poverty of Philosophy. I thought that was clever. Jenny thought it was insulting. I suppose Jenny was a better human being than I could ever be. She encouraged me to get off my behind and get involved in the cause of the London worker. She came with me when I was invited to address the first meeting of the International Working Men's Association. It was in the fall of 1864. 2,000 people were packed into St. Martin's Hall. The workers of all countries must unite against foreign policies which are criminal, which play upon natural prejudices, which squander in wars the public's treasure and the public's blood. We must combine across national boundaries to vindicate the simple laws of moral and justice in international affairs. Workers of the world, unite. Jenny liked that. She kept the family going. With the water cut off, the gas cut off. But she never tired of the subject of female emancipation. She said the vitality of women was being sapped by staying at home and darning socks and cooking. So she refused to stay at home. She accused me of being an emancipationist, but practically ignorant of the problems of women. You and Engels, she said, write about sexual equality, but you do not practice it. Well, I won't comment on that. She supported with all her heart the Irish struggle against England. Queen Victoria had said the Irish are really abominable people, like no other civilized nation. Jenny wrote a letter to the London newspapers. England hangs Irish rebels. Want nothing but freedom. Is England a civilized nation? Jenny and I are powerfully involved. How can I make you understand that? But we went through hellish times in London. The love was still there. But at a certain point, things changed. I don't know why. Jenny said it was because she was no longer the great beauty she had known. That made me angry. She said it was because of lynching. That made me even more angry. She said I was angry because it was true. That made me furious. They claim that because the Soviet Union collapsed, communism is dead. Do these idiots know what communism is? Do they think a system run by a thug who murders his fellow revolutionaries is communism? Schleichkoffen, journalists, politicians who say such things, what kind of education did they have? Did they ever read the manifesto that Engels and I wrote when he was 28 years old and I was 30? Wait, let me show you something. This shows you something that you may not realize. Here it is. In place of the old bourgeois society, with its classes and class antagonisms, we shall have an association in which the free development of each is the condition for the free development of all. An association. Do they understand the objective of communism? Freedom of the individual to develop himself, herself, as a compassionate human being. Do they think that someone who calls himself a communist or a socialist and acts like a gangster understands what communism is? To shoot those who disagree with you. Can that be the communism that I gave my life for? That monster who took all power to himself in Russia and who insisted on interpreting my ideas like a religious fanatic when he was putting his old comrades up against the wall before firing squads. Did he allow his citizens to read the letter I wrote to the New York Tribune, in which I said capital punishment could not be justified in any society calling itself civilized. Socialism is not supposed to reproduce the stupidities of capitalism. Here in America, your prisons are crowded. Who is in them? The poor. Some of them have committed violent and terrible crimes. Most of them are burglars, thieves, robbers, sellers of drugs. They believe in free enterprise. They do what the capitalists do, only on a much smaller scale. Do you know what Engels and I wrote about prisons? Wait, let me show you. Here it is. Essay we wrote on prison. Here it is. Rather than punishing individuals for their crimes, we should destroy the social conditions which engender crime, and give to each individual the scope which he needs in society in order to develop his life. Oh yes,